Samashki. On April 7 and 8, 1995, the invading armed gangs of the Russian Federation and mercenaries in the Chechen Republic. They staged a genocide of Chechens in the village of Samashki. About 3,000 Russian terrorist soldiers demanded to hand over about 300 weapons from the civilian population. People gathered what they could to avoid the sweep and shelling of the village, and gave 11 pieces of small arms, all that was available in the village. Later, the Russians entered the village and began killing and looting, burning houses and people alive. More than 300 people were killed in the most brutal manner during the so-called Russian sweep. The Russian occupiers shot children and women, burned people alive and threw grenades into basements where the defenseless and unarmed Chechens hid. About 200 men were detained and taken to concentration camps. Some of them were executed and went missing. All detained Chechens were subjected to brutal torture and few were able to return alive. In the report of the UN Commission on Human Rights HR Committee, of March 1996 states, it is reported that in the period from April 7 to April 8, 1995, in the village of Samashki in western Chechnya, more than 100 people were massacred, all civilians. According to the testimony of 128 survivors, the Russian armed terrorists, gangsters, rapists, sadistic maniacs, the so-called Russian soldiers deliberately attacked civilians in Samashki, shot at them and burned their homes with flamethrowers. Most of the witnesses reported that many Russian soldiers were intoxicated or drugged. They shot at people for no reason and threw grenades into basements where the defenseless and unarmed Chechens hid. Until April 10, the surviving villagers were not allowed to take out the wounded, and doctors and representatives of the ICRC were not allowed to enter the village, which was closed and blocked by the occupation forces. The Red Cross received permission to enter only on April 27. At least 13 survivors of the wounded died due to lack of medical care. When Western journalists were allowed into Samashki for the first time after the April 14 assault, they found that the village was littered with decomposing bodies. Russians are doing the same thing to Ukrainians today. The real beauty of the Russian world. We will not forget, we will not forgive, we are not broken. Forever in memory, Samashki.